Lena Whitaker recorded the video with steady hands, while Marisol Whitaker watched it hours later in a quiet Dubai apartment, unaware that those calm words and familiar eyes were marking the exact moment a daughter stepped out of one life forever and into another that no one would be allowed to follow. Lena Whitaker had always lived her life quietly. She was not the kind of person who shared every detail online or called attention to herself. Friends described her as organized, thoughtful, and careful with her choices. When she accepted a temporary consulting job overseas, no one was surprised. It fit her personality. She liked structure, contracts, and clear timelines. The job was supposed to last 6 months, and she had already booked a return flight back to the United States. At the time, Lena's mother, Marisol Whitaker, was staying in Dubai to help a sick relative. Even though they were in the same city, they did not see each other often. Lena worked long hours from her apartment, and Marisol stayed with family across town. They stayed connected through daily messages, short calls, and occasional video chats. Nothing about their routine felt unusual. On a quiet Tuesday evening, Marisol received a video message from Lena. That alone was not strange. What caught her attention was the timing. Lena usually sent videos in the morning. This one arrived late at night. In the video, Lena sat on her couch with a soft smile on her face. The lighting was warm, and her voice sounded steady. She looked rested, not stressed. She said everything was fine and that work was going well. She mentioned she was packing early to avoid rushing before her flight home. Behind her, a suitcase stood open, clothes neatly arranged inside. The apartment looked normal, clean, calm. Marisol noticed how carefully the camera was positioned. Lena was centered in the frame. Nothing personal was visible. No photos, no papers, no distractions. It felt planned, but Marisol didn't question it at the time. Parents often ignore small instincts when there is no clear reason to worry. The video ended abruptly, without Lena's usual casual wave or smile. That small detail stayed in Marisol's mind later, though she couldn't explain why. The next morning, Marisol sent a message to Lena. There was no response. She waited a few hours and tried calling. The call rang once, then disconnected. By the afternoon, the phone went straight to voicemail. At first, Marisol assumed Lena was busy or asleep after a long night of work. By evening, concern replaced patience. Marisol went to Lena's apartment building, expecting to knock on her door and laugh about overreacting. The security desk confirmed Lena lived there, but said she had not returned since the previous night. Her access card had not been used. The building manager tried calling her as well. There was no answer. When Marisol stood in the hallway outside Lena's apartment, everything felt wrong. The door was locked. There were no sounds inside, no movement, no sign of life. Authorities were contacted that night. They treated it as a missing adult case, calm and procedural. Lena was an American citizen. She had a valid job, no criminal history, no known enemies. Her passport records showed no departure from the country. Her return flight was scheduled for 3 days later. That flight would remain unused. As hours turned into days, investigators reviewed Lena's last known communication. That video became the center of the case. On the surface, it showed a woman at peace. But the more it was watched, the more unsettling it felt. Lena blinked less than usual. Her smile never reached her eyes. She spoke as if she were reading from memory, careful not to pause too long. Everything was fine, but nothing after that moment ever was. That video was not the start of the mystery. It was the end of Lena Whitaker's visible life. After Lena Whitaker disappeared, investigators turned their attention to her life before the final video. On paper, everything looked stable. She had a signed consulting contract with a mid-sized logistics company, steady monthly income, and no history of disciplinary issues. Her work evaluations described her as reliable and precise. She met deadlines, avoided office politics, and rarely took time off. Nothing in her professional life suggested stress or fear. Her personal life appeared just as quiet. Lena had no romantic partner in Dubai and maintained only a small circle of contacts. She didn't attend large social gatherings or nightlife events. Most of her time was spent inside her apartment, working, reading, or exercising. Neighbors remembered her as friendly but distant, someone who smiled in passing but never stayed to talk. It was the kind of lifestyle that left very little behind when it ended. When investigators gained access to her financial records, the first crack appeared. 2 weeks before the video was sent, Lena had changed the passwords to all her banking and investment accounts. The changes were done late at night over several sessions, suggesting careful attention rather than panic. Shortly after, she moved a large portion of her savings into a newly created overseas account. The account was not linked to her employer, her family, or any known associate. This was not something Lena had ever done before. Her spending habits had always been conservative. She avoided unnecessary purchases and kept detailed records. Yet, in the days leading up to her disappearance, she withdrew small amounts of cash multiple times, each transaction below reporting limits. The pattern suggested someone who knew exactly how financial monitoring worked. Her laptop revealed even more unsettling details. Although much of her browsing history had been deleted, forensic specialists recovered fragments. Lena had researched long-term residency options in multiple countries. She had looked up privacy laws, identity protections, and international legal loopholes. None of these searches were random. They followed a clear path, growing more specific over time. She also searched for private investigative services, not to hire one, but to understand how they operated, how they tracked people, what data they could access, what mistakes people made when trying to disappear. The final search, made just hours before the video was recorded, focused on digital footprints and how to erase them. Despite this, there were no signs of emotional distress in her messages or notes. She left no journal, no goodbye letters, and no instructions. Her emails remained professional and ordinary. She scheduled work tasks days in advance, even though she would never complete them. This detail confused investigators. People planning to run rarely pretend to plan a future they know won't happen. Another contradiction emerged in her medical records. Lena had recently completed a full health checkup, including tests usually required for long-term relocation visas. She paid in cash, no insurance was used. The results showed she was healthy. There was no urgency, no illness driving her behavior. Friends back in the United States were interviewed next. None reported arguments, fear, or unusual conversations. Lena spoke about returning home, about normal things, about plans that now seemed pointless. She even discussed redecorating her apartment after she came back from Dubai, despite knowing she would likely never see it again. That was the most disturbing pattern. Lena was not acting like someone being chased. She was acting like someone closing one life while carefully maintaining the illusion of another. Every move she made was quiet, legal, thoughtful. She didn't burn bridges or create drama. She left behind just enough normality to slow down suspicion. By the time anyone realized something was wrong, her trail was already cold. What investigators couldn't answer was why. Nothing in her past explained the need to disappear so completely. No crime, no debt, no threat. Only preparation. And preparation without fear is often the most dangerous clue of all. When authorities finally entered Lena Whitaker's apartment, they expected to find something obvious. A struggle, a broken object, a message written in haste. Instead, they found order. The space looked exactly the way it had in the final video, almost as if time had paused the moment she left. The front door showed no damage. The lock was intact and fully functional. Inside, the living room was clean and uncluttered. Furniture was arranged neatly, with nothing out of place. The couch cushions were aligned, and the coffee table held only a single book placed squarely in the center. Dust patterns suggested no one had been inside since Lena walked out. The suitcase seen in the video was still there, resting near the wall. It was no longer open. It had been carefully zipped shut. Inside were folded clothes, travel-sized toiletries, and shoes placed heel to toe. Everything appeared deliberate. There was no rush, no forgotten item, no sign that she intended to return for anything else. Her bedroom told a similar story. The bed was made tightly, hotel style. The closet held only clothing suitable for daily wear. Several outfits were missing, including the ones she had worn in recent security footage. Jewelry remained untouched. Electronics sat on the desk, fully charged. Her laptop was powered down properly, not abandoned mid-task. The kitchen revealed something even more unsettling. The refrigerator was nearly empty, except for bottled water and pre-packaged meals with expiration dates weeks away. The trash bin was clean, with no fresh waste. There were no signs she planned to cook again. Then investigators moved to the bathroom. At first glance, it appeared spotless. Too spotless. The mirror above the sink had been wiped so thoroughly it reflected light without a single streak. However, in the bottom corner, a faint smudge remained. It was a fingerprint. Forensic teams lifted it carefully. The print did not match Lena's. It didn't match anyone in local databases either. There were no additional prints nearby, suggesting the mirror had been cleaned intentionally, with only one mistake left behind. Security footage from the building filled in the timeline. Lena was seen exiting the elevator late at night, dressed casually, carrying a small black backpack. She walked through the lobby at a normal pace. She did not look around or hesitate. She passed the security desk without interaction and exited the building. That was the last confirmed sighting. There was no footage of anyone entering her apartment after that moment. No cleaners, no visitors, no maintenance requests. The building's systems showed her access card had not been used again. This ruled out several theories. She had not been taken from her apartment, no one forced their way in, no struggle occurred inside those walls, which meant whatever changed Lena's life happened outside, beyond the cameras. Investigators searched the backpack's contents through purchase records. The bag had been bought weeks earlier. Inside, based on similar models, it could hold documents, cash, and a compact electronic device. None of those items were found in the apartment. Her passport was also missing. Her phone, however, remained on the nightstand. That detail raised alarm. People rarely leave behind their phones unless they plan to disappear or don't expect to need them again. The device had been factory reset hours before she left. No data, no contacts, no history. Even the SIM card was gone. The apartment gave no answers, only conclusions. Lena had not left in fear. She had not been interrupted. She had completed every task she intended to do. The space felt less like a crime scene and more like a closed chapter, a place intentionally emptied of relevance. Investigators later described the apartment as a shell, not abandoned, finished. Lena Whitaker did not vanish from that apartment. She exited it calmly and completely and stepped into something she had already decided to face. Months passed with no progress, and Lena Whitaker's case began to fade from public attention. Then a financial analyst reviewing dormant cases noticed a pattern that others had missed. The overseas account Lena had used was not unique. It shared structural similarities with several other accounts tied to missing persons from different countries. Different names, different banks, but the same layered routing and identical timing gaps between transfers. All of them led to shell companies. One name appeared repeatedly during the deeper audit: Rowan Hale. At first glance, it looked like a person, listed as a director, a consultant, a legal representative. But every attempt to verify the identity failed. There were no birth records, no immigration entries, no employment history. The name existed only on paper and in digital filings. Investigators widened the scope. They uncovered 3 other women who had vanished over the past decade, one from Canada, one from Germany, and one from New Zealand. Each case had been handled quietly, dismissed as voluntary disappearance or assumed relocation, but the similarities were impossible to ignore. Each woman had sent reassuring messages to family shortly before vanishing. Each had transferred funds into newly created accounts. Each had erased their digital footprints with unusual precision. And in every case, Rowan Hale appeared somewhere in the paperwork, not as a suspect, as a facilitator. Authorities began to suspect that Rowan Hale was not an individual, but a constructed identity used by a network, a system designed to help people disappear legally, cleanly, and permanently. No violence, no coercion, no public trail, just guidance, documentation, and timing. The theory explained something investigators had struggled with since the beginning. Lena had not been running from danger, she had been moving toward a solution. Digital evidence suggested she had been in contact with encrypted services weeks before her disappearance. The messages themselves could not be recovered, but metadata showed scheduled communications, consistent intervals, and abrupt termination the night she left her apartment. Whatever guidance she received ended exactly when she walked out the door. There were no demands, no threats, no ransom attempts. That absence spoke volumes. The women connected to Rowan Hale had all been highly organized, financially stable, and illegally clean. None were impulsive, none had criminal backgrounds. They were ideal candidates for voluntary erasure, people capable of following instructions perfectly. Investigators also noticed another shared trait. Each woman had faced a quiet but irreversible future problem. One had been entangled in an international legal dispute. Another was about to lose control of inherited assets. A third was tied to an identity compromise that could not be undone. Lena's problem remained unknown. Her records revealed no lawsuits, no charges, no public scandals. But silence does not mean absence. Some threats exist only in documents sealed by law or systems that punish exposure. Authorities reached a difficult conclusion. If Rowan Hale's network existed, it operated within legal gray zones across multiple countries. It did not kidnap, it did not traffic, it advised, it arranged, it erased. And because the participants consented, there was no crime to prosecute. This shifted Lena's case into an uncomfortable category. If she chose this path, no law had been broken, no one could force her to return, no agency could reveal her location without violating international agreements. The final report described Rowan Hale as a persistent non-entity, a mechanism rather than a mastermind. It suggested that the true danger was not the network itself, but the fact that such disappearances could happen without triggering alarms. Lena Whitaker was no longer classified as missing due to foul play. She was classified as missing by design. And once that conclusion was reached, the investigation quietly slowed, then stopped. Years after Lena Whitaker disappeared, her case existed only in archived files and private memories. Most agencies had closed their reviews. The trail had gone cold in every official sense. There were no new leads, no sightings, and no financial activity linked to her original identity. To the world, Lena had simply ceased to exist. Marisol Whitaker never stopped checking. Even when told there was nothing more to find, she kept one routine unchanged. Every month, on the same day, she logged into an old email account Lena had created years earlier. It was never used for work, social media, or subscriptions. Only the two of them knew it existed. No messages ever arrived. Until one night, long after hope had settled into quiet acceptance. The email contained no subject line, there was no written message, no signature, just a single attachment and a timestamp. The file itself was empty, but embedded within it was a brief data ping, active for less than 2 seconds before disappearing. Marisol didn't understand what she was looking at, but investigators did. The ping was not random. It was deliberate, precise, and technologically advanced. It revealed a location without exposing an identity, a method often used by journalists, intelligence operatives, and people who needed to be found only by those who knew how to look. The coordinates did not point to Dubai. They did not lead to the United States. Instead, they indicated a small coastal region in a country known for its relaxed residency laws and limited identity registration requirements, a place where names could be changed quietly and records were kept minimal. Authorities debated reopening the case, but the legal obstacles were immediate. There was no warrant, no evidence of danger, no crime. If Lena was alive and had chosen this life, she was protected by international law. Searching for her could itself be considered a violation. The most unsettling part was the timing. The email arrived exactly 5 years after the night Lena left her apartment, not a day earlier, not a day later. It suggested planning that extended far beyond her disappearance. Experts reviewed the original video again, frame by frame. This time, they noticed something new. In the reflection of the window behind Lena, a faint light blinked twice, then stopped. It matched the same signal pattern used in the email ping years later. The video had never been reassurance. It had been confirmation. Investigators concluded that Lena had not cut ties completely. She had left a thread, thin but intentional. Not a request for rescue, not an invitation to follow, just proof of survival. Marisol was advised not to respond. Any reply could expose Lena's location or compromise the system that protected her. The silence was painful, but it was also clear. Lena did not want to be found. She wanted to be known to exist. The final internal note on the case stated that Lena Whitaker was believed to be alive under a new identity, living outside traditional tracking systems. It acknowledged that her disappearance was not the result of violence or coercion, but a calculated choice made long before the last video was sent. For the public, the story ended with a mystery. For Marisol, it ended with certainty. Lena had not vanished. She had escaped a future no one else ever knew about. And the video, that once terrified a family, had quietly done exactly what it was meant to do. It said everything was fine.